This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We have a stack of research today that is, well, it's frankly going to change the way you look at your bookshelf.
It really might.
We are going to try something a little bit different. I want you to imagine a sorting hat.
Okay.
You know, like in a fantasy novel. But instead of sorting wizards into houses based on their bravery or cunning, we're sorting the greatest thinkers in human history.
I'm with you.
We're lining them all up. Plato, Aristotle, Marx, Hegel, and we are deciding, do they belong to the house of reason, or do they secretly belong to the house of narrative?
That's a fascinating image. And the interesting thing is, we aren't the ones who came up with this sorting system.
No.
It was actually designed by a very specific, somewhat obscure figure from the 18th century, a man named Johann Jakob Brucker.
Right, the mystery judge. And the reason we are dusting off his history today is because the sources we're looking at suggest something really wild.
They do.
They suggest that this man who lived back in the 1700s created a way of judging the world that held up for centuries.
Yeah.
Right until the year 1989.
Exactly. The claim here is that when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, it didn't just change the map of Europe. It effectively retired Johann Jakob Brucker.
It broke his sorting hat.
It broke the hat.
Which is a huge claim. So our mission today is to unpack this. Who was this guy? Why did he draw these specific lines in the sand between philosophy and, well, theology?
And why did the fall of communism make his life's work suddenly obsolete?
It's a journey that takes us from Lutheran pulpits to the Cold War and finally to the confusion of the modern day.
It's quite a trip.
So let's start with the man himself, Johann Jakob Brucker. If you look him up, the profile is pretty standard. Born in 1696, died in 1770, a German historian of philosophy, wrote this massive encyclopedia of philosophy that, you know, nobody really reads anymore. But there's a twist in his bio that actually explains everything, isn't there?
There is. And it's the detail that usually surprises people who assume the Enlightenment was all about secularism. Brucker wasn't just a historian.
He was what?
He was a devout Lutheran pastor.
A pastor. Okay, let's unpack this immediately. Because when I think of an 18th century pastor judging philosophers, I assume he's going to be the church authority guy.
Right, the book burner.
Yeah, telling everyone to stop thinking and just believe in the Bible. If you're a pastor writing the history of philosophy, aren't you just going to fail everyone who isn't a Christian?
That is the natural assumption.
Yeah.
We tend to think of that era as faith versus reason, where the religious people are fighting against the logical people. But Brucker helps us see it differently.
How so?
Remember, he was a Protestant, specifically a Lutheran. He wasn't a Catholic priest answering to, the Vatican hierarchy. He was part of the Reformation tradition.
So he's already a bit of a rebel against the old institutional authority.
Precisely. But here is the counterintuitive part.
Yeah.
Usually we think religious figures want to blend theology into everything. They want to see God in science, God in politics.
God in philosophy.
Brucker wanted the exact opposite.
He wanted to keep them separate.
He was obsessed with purity. This is the key insight from the sources. Brucker believed that if you mix faith and reason, you corrupt both.
Both of them.
You get a sloppy religion that tries to rely on human logic instead of divine revelation, and you get a dishonest philosophy that claims to know things it can't possibly prove.
Oh, that's interesting. So his problem wasn't with philosophy itself.
Not at all.
His problem was with philosophers who were secretly trying to be priests.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Yeah.
His goal was, let theology be theology. That is for the pulpit, for revelation, for faith, and let philosophy be philosophy. That is for reason, for logic, for analyzing the world.
Yeah.
His fear was that if a philosopher starts promising salvation or, redemption through logic, they are selling a counterfeit product.
It's like he's setting up a quarantine zone. Don't bring your salvation stories into my logic class.
That is a great way to put it. And to understand why this was so necessary for him, we have to look at the context. For centuries, the saying was that philosophy is the handmaiden of theology.
The assistant.
The servant. Right. Philosophy existed to help explain God. And because of that, almost all the great thinkers were trying to tell a specific kind of story. The sources call it the salvation narrative.
Let's define that term because it comes up a lot. Salvation narrative. We're not just talking about going to heaven, right?
In the philosophical sense, no. A salvation narrative is any system of thought that promises a specific happy ending to history.
Right.
It's the idea that history isn't just random stuff happening. It has a plot. It has a beginning, a struggle, and a guaranteed resolution where we all reach the promised land.
So it's teleological. It implies there's a design, a destination.
Precisely. And Brucker hated this in philosophy. He felt that saving people was God's job, found in the Bible. If a philosopher comes along and says, hey, if you just follow my logic, you'll reach a state of perfect bliss, Brucker sees that as a fake religion.
So this is where his grading system comes in. He's looking at these famous geniuses and giving them a pass or fail based on what?
Not how religious they were personally, but how much they tried to turn their philosophy into a religion. His criteria was basically distance from theology.
Okay, so let's look at the report card. Who is the teacher's pet? Who gets the gold star from Judge Brucker?
The clear winner, the hero of Brucker's history, is Aristotle.
Aristotle, okay. Why him? I mean, he's brilliant, but he lived long before any of this. Why does he pass the test?
Because Aristotle was analytical. Think about what he actually wrote. He categorized plants. He explained logic and rhetoric. He talked about ethics and politics as practical systems for running a city.
Just the mechanics.
Yes, the mechanics of the world. But he didn't promise that the world was heading toward a magical end times. He didn't offer salvation. He just offered understanding.
So he was dry, he was safe, he wasn't trying to be a messiah.
Exactly. To Brucker, that was honest philosophy. It stayed in its lane. It didn't try to do God's job.
Okay, so who are the losers? Who got sent to the principal's office?
Well, the list is long and it's full of heavy hitters. Plato, Plotinus, Augustine, Thomas Aquinas.
Wait, Plato. Plato gets a failing grade. He's practically the father of Western thought. How does he fail?
In Brucker's eyes, yes.
Okay.
You think about Platonism. It's all about the world of forms, this higher, perfect reality that we're trying to ascend to.
The cave?
Right. Plato tells us this reality is just shadows on a cave wall, and if we're smart enough, we can ascend to the true reality.
That sounds a lot like a religious experience.
It is. It's mysticism. It's a salvation story wrapped in a toga. Brucker looks at that and says, this is theology masquerading as reason.
Wow.
And he fails Plotinus. He fails the Neoplatonists. And he is very skeptical of anyone who tries to build a system that explains everything. It gets worse with figures like Augustine or Aquinas, who literally used philosophy to build Christian theology.
Right.
But Brucker's critique goes forward in time, too. He would have looked at later thinkers like Hegel in the 19th century with deep suspicion.
Because Hegel was all about the spirit moving through history toward a final destination, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hegel basically said, history is a machine designed to produce freedom and perfection. That is a salvation narrative. It's a story with a guaranteed happy ending.
I think it's important to pause here and really nail this down. Brucker wasn't doing this because he hated God.
No, absolutely not.
He was doing this because he loved God.
That is the crucial distinction. He wasn't an atheist trying to kick religion out of the room. He was a pastor protecting his faith. He believed that salvation comes from God through revelation.
Okay.
If a philosopher comes along and says, hey, I can get you to salvation just using human logic, Brucker sees that as a counterfeit religion. He's protecting the church's monopoly on salvation.
That is such a fascinating dynamic. You guys do logic, we'll do saving souls.
Pretty much.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Brucker dies in 1770, but his sorting hat method, this idea of spotting fake theology, remains relevant. Because even as Europe became more secular, the salvation narrative didn't go away, did it?
No, it didn't. And this leads us right to the 20th century. By this time, in many philosophical circles, the concept of God had faded. But the structure of the salvation story, the idea that history has a direction and a guaranteed ending, was stronger than ever.
And this brings us to the biggest theologian in disguise of them all, according to this framework, Karl Marx.
Yes, the sources are very clear on this. Marxism, from a Bruckerian perspective, was the last great narrative.
Now, hold on. This sounds contradictory because Marx was an atheist. He famously called religion the opium of the people. How can you classify him as a theologian?
Because you have to look at the structure of what he preached. He presented it as science historical materialism. He claimed it was just economic analysis. But if you strip away the terms, it functioned exactly like a religious prophecy.
Let's break that down. What are the parallels?
Okay, so first you have the equivalent of original sin. In the Bible, it's the fall of man.
Right.
In Marx, it's the invention of private property. That's the moment everything goes wrong.
Okay, I see that. Then what?
Then you have the period of suffering. In religion, it's the trials of the faithful. In Marx, it's class struggle and the misery of capitalism.
And the apocalypse.
The revolution. the violent event that purges the wicked, the bourgeoisie, and destroys the old order. That is Judgment Day.
And finally, heaven on earth.
Communism, the stateless society where everyone is free, conflict ends. It is a salvation narrative with the serial numbers filed off.
Wow.
Instead of God's will, Marx calls it historical materialism. He claims it's inevitable. But it appeals to the exact same human need for a story with a guaranteed happy ending.
When you lay it out like that, it really is just the Christian salvation story repurposed for an industrial age.
Exactly. Instead of God saving us, the dialectic of history saves us. But the promise is the same, a designed future, a guarantee. So if Judge Brucker had been alive, he would have pointed a shaking finger at Marx and said, this is the ultimate enemy.
The ultimate corruption, the biggest wolf in sheep's clothing.
Precisely. And this sets the stage for the dramatic conclusion of Brucker's career, the moment when the sorting hat finally broke.
The year 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Now, usually when we talk about 1989, we talk about politics, democracy versus communism, the end of the Cold War.
Right.
But our deep dive today asks us to look at it philosophically. The source calls it the collapse of the last theology.
That is a heavy phrase.
It is. Think about what actually collapsed when that wall came down. It wasn't just concrete. It was the belief in that designed future.
The guarantee.
The guarantee that history was inevitably moving toward communism evaporated.
The inevitability turned out to be totally avoidable. The prophecy failed.
And when the prophecy failed, the salvation narrative died.
Yeah.
For the first time in thousands of years, going back to Plato, through the church to Marx, the Western world found itself without a dominant story that promised a happy ending.
The idea that history has a plan for us just vanished.
And this brings us back to our friend, the pastor.
Judge Brucker.
The source suggests this poetic idea. When the Berlin Wall fell, Brucker's job was officially finished. He had spent centuries through his work guarding the line between philosophy and fake theology. He was the gatekeeper.
But once the last giant fake theology, Marxism collapsed.
There was no one left to guard against. The enemy was gone. The judge could finally leave the stage.
So his whole job became redundant.
His criteria, how far is this from theology, stopped making sense because the theology part of philosophy had just disappeared.
That is actually kind of sad, or maybe liberating. But it leaves us in a weird spot, because if the judge left the building in 1989, who took over? Who are the thinkers that came after the wall fell?
The source lists a few key names that define the post-1989 world. Thinkers like Jean Baudrillard, Michel Foucault, Judith Butler, Yuval Noah Harari.
And how are they different? I know Foucault talks about power, but is he telling a big story?
No, and that is the key difference. They are deconstructionists. They are the anti-narrative thinkers. They didn't try to build a new salvation story to replace Marxism. They spent their time dismantling the old ones.
So instead of saying, follow me to the promised land, they're saying, there is no promised land, and the map you're holding is fake.
Exactly. They denied theology completely. But, and here's the catch, they didn't offer a replacement. There is no longer a salvation being preached. But there is also no design.
It's a void. It's demolition without construction.
It is a landscape without a horizon. If you try to use Brucker's yardstick on a thinker like Foucault, it doesn't work.
How so?
Brucker measured, how close is this to a salvation story? Foucault says, I don't believe in stories. The yardstick no longer measures anything.
The object of the judgment has vanished. It's like trying to use a metal detector in a world where metal doesn't exist anymore.
That is a perfect analogy. We are living in a time, according to this deep dive, where the tension that defined Western thought for 2,000 years has snapped.
The tension between reason and salvation.
We have reason, or at least we have data. But we have given up on the salvation part, at least in our philosophy.
Which explains why so many people feel a bit lost. Like, we have all this information, all this science, but no story to tell us where it's all going.
We are in the aftermath. The judge is retired, the salvation narrative is dead, and we are standing in the rubble looking around.
But nature abhors a vacuum, right? Can humans really live without a story?
That is the question the sources leave us with. And it mentions a contemporary thinker, Yuval Noah Harari.
The Sapiens guy, right?
Harari points out that we are now moving from salvation to data. We aren't looking for a story to save us. We're looking for algorithms to manage us.
It's a shift from history has a purpose to biology has a code.
Which is the ultimate anti-narrative. It's just processing. If Brucker were alive today, he wouldn't know how to grade Harari.
Why not?
Because Harari isn't pretending to be a priest. He's pretending to be a computer. The category era Brucker fought against logic versus faith has dissolved because we've largely abandoned the faith part in our public thought.
So let's try to wrap our heads around the arc here. We started with a Lutheran pastor, Johann Jakob Brucker, who wanted to keep his faith pure by keeping it separate from philosophy.
He graded history's thinkers. Aristotle passed because he was analytical. Plato and the others failed because they were trying to be mystics.
This battle continued for centuries, culminating in the giant secular religion of Marxism, a story that promised heaven on earth.
And then, 1989, the crash. The narrative broke. The judge's work was done. And now we live in a world of fragments.
It's a powerful way to look at history. It changes how I see the news, honestly. When I hear people offering big solutions now, I wonder, are they trying to resurrect a narrative?
Or are they just managing the chaos? That is the big question. And it raises an even bigger one for us as individuals.
What's that?
If the salvation narratives are gone, if nobody is guaranteeing us a happy ending anymore, and if the judge who told us what was good thinking and bad thinking has left the building, what criteria do we use now?
Yeah, the sorting hat is gone. We don't have the pastor to tell us what is fake theology and what is real philosophy.
The source suggests that the next criteria must be created by us. We can't rely on an 18th century pastor or a 19th century revolutionary to tell us what the meaning of our history is.
That is both terrifying and exciting. It puts the responsibility squarely on us.
It does. Brucker's sorting hat was useful because it told us who to trust. Now we have to build our own filters. When you hear a politician or a tech CEO offering a vision of the future, you have to ask, are they offering a plan?
Or are they secretly smuggling in a salvation story? Are they trying to be a priest in a lab coat?
Exactly. The judge may be dead, but the need to judge, that never goes away.
Well, that is certainly something to chew on. We've gone from 18th century theology to the anxiety of the AI age in what, about 15 minutes?
It's all connected. It's a reminder that ideas have consequences, and sometimes the most obscure figures cast the longest shadows.
Absolutely. And to you, listening in a world where the old yardsticks don't work, how will you measure the value of an idea today? Think about that. The script is shredded. What are you going to write on the blank page? Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
We'll see you next time.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.